The other thing I just want to touch on briefly, and it's going to become very important, are some of the health issues that I've been seeing associated with the dry weather. Feed and water quality, and I know Brett touched on it very importantly with the feed. That's a really important one. But not only the nutrient value, we are seeing cases of what we think are botulism. They haven't died, luckily, so we haven't been able to get the test available to say yet. We need to do another blood test 3 weeks down the track. The other one I am definitely seeing is nitrate poisoning in Sudan and sorghum hay. We've had about 3 different sets of cases on 3 different properties. The other one is blue-green algae. I'm certainly getting cases that are most likely to have been blue-green algae, but they were too late to test. There was certainly high levels of blue-green algae in the water, so it's something to be aware of. Sorts of hay you don't want. This is nice hay, well stored. It's only grassy hay, but it's in good condition. These are the sorts of things that we start to question mark. Okay, silage that's been open, hay that's mouldy, and mycotoxin effects as well. This isn't my particular case, but it was about 14 head of cattle died overnight being fed nitrate-rich sorghum hay the night before. Not a pleasant surprise when you get up in the morning and check what they're been up to. Blue-green algae, just one of the things that you may be aware of or may not be aware of with management. That's a classic dam full of it. As your water levels lower down and your flow is less and it's shallower and we've had high temperatures, it's and high nutrient content, it's pretty common to see. Aeration can be a way of preventing its growth. Okay, so if we can aerate water, that can make a difference in trying to manage it. Fertility, I think we talked a fair bit about that with Brett, so I'll just flick through those in order to keep our time together a little bit. Pink eye, pink eye, I really want to talk a little bit about the management of that. Really important when you have large animals or large numbers of animals congregating together. You are going to get classic, it's like sending the kids to school for the first time. They get up close and personal with everyone else and they bring every bug home, okay? Same thing, these guys are up close and personal around feeders, around hay, around troughs. The pink eye is going to be a major issue. Fly control, you can use the topical porons, you can use ear tags. Don't forget the good old dung beetle around, does help minimise the number of flies. One thing that I do want to highlight a little bit, I'm not saying use new tubes between each animal. That's our ideal world production. But when you're treating them, if you're treating one animal and taking the tube straight from that eye to the next animal, you're taking all the bugs that are on that eye and putting it straight in the eye of the next animal. So you may have had one that's had a nasty ulcer with pink eye and another one that's just a little bit weepy and it may only just be dust at that stage, and you've just inoculated it with a whole dose of the bacteria. So it's worth thinking about that, maybe even just having some metho wipes, something like that on hand that you can wipe them between livestock, or if you're not going to, realise the risk that you're taking. Vaccination is an option. Anyone around here vaccinate for pink eye? Yep. What sort of percentage do you think you get? Yeah, there is variation in what we call efficacy of the vaccine. They talk about around about 80%. So even if you have vaccinated, you can get animals with pink eye. And just be aware of that with any vaccine that you use. You're always balancing what I would get if I didn't do it. So you may still get some animals that are affected, but if it's cut the problem down by 80%, then that's fantastic. So just bear that in mind a little bit with vaccines. And of course, the patches. Now, the patches when you're using treatment are aimed at protecting the eye from any further contamination and protecting it from light. They are fantastic. They are also expensive. I have seen quite a few producers that have made their own patches that have worked just as successfully with cut up pieces of denim and using the same sort of contact to put it around the eye, and that seems to be working really well as a cost-effective option. So fly tags for ears, pink eye patches as part of our treatment. We all tend to get a little bit carried away in dry conditions that we are so busy feeding or watering or moving livestock or making decisions or realising that we're spending money hand over fist, we forget the routine health treatments. They are really, really important to these cattle, okay? The moment we get any green out there, if it rains and we get any green, I am going to see animals dropping like flies from pulpy kidney because their 5-in-1 vaccine isn't up to date. So if you get any change in conditions, 5-in-1 vaccination is really important. If you are putting them onto feed and grain, 5-in-1 vaccination is really important. So if you're making any major change to their diet, 5-in-1 vaccine is a very cheap insurance policy. 7-in-1, the reason I've put that one up there, we've had a lot of pigs coming down out of the hills because there's not as much feed up there, obviously, as well. So contamination of watering hot points, that sort of thing. Leptospirosis is going to be an issue in the next little while. So we're actually taking some blood tests at the moment from some of those pigs and seeing how widespread it is in the population. 7-in-1, any cows or heifers that you're looking at keeping, keep that up to date. The other question mark I've put there are respiratory vaccines. If we've got large numbers of weaners coming in en masse to be fed in a feedlot type situation, and that's what it is basically, increased respiratory outbreaks will occur. So it may be something to consider as part of your program if you look at costing it through. The other one I'm definitely seeing, and it sounds ridiculous when you look out the ground out there, but I'm seeing increased parasites. Okay, I'm actually seeing sheep dying from worm burdens when they're living basically on dirt. So be aware of it, keep your drenching up to date. The work that we've done seems to suggest that a lot of it's to do with they are eating so close to the ground that they're picking up contamination. And in addition to that, these animals are stressed. So adult cows that we usually wouldn't worry about drenching, we're needing to drench because their inbuilt resistance to that worm population is down because of their lower body condition and the stress that they're under, so they're shedding large numbers of eggs. So be conscious of drenching and your vaccination. Can't stress those enough.
There's two issues on that animal health. One is if you're going to feed or do whatever, those vaccinations should take place a week or so before you're going to.
Ideally, yes. But most people will bring them through yards once and that's when they'll do it. But if they're animals that have been previously vaccinated, they will respond anyway. So yeah, if they've been previously vaccinated, you're fine.
The other issue on that is that I know at Thorntwaite they've got the 5-in-1 at market. Is that their first or their second?
It's actually their first. It's not ideal, but it's the program that they use. And you're quite right. If you're looking at 5-in-1, ideally we would give them their first vaccination 4 weeks prior to marking, and then their second one at well, the real ideal world, we'd do 6 weeks prior to marking, then 4 weeks prior to marking, then mark, so that they're completely covered by the vaccine at the time of marking. It doesn't always work into when you've got the numbers that you're dealing with here, then each time you bring cattle into the yard, the expense of doing it is really high. So that's where you're looking at that as part of your decision-making process. Yeah?
Just on the drenching and worms, are there any more worm egg courses coming up like in the district? Because I've done mine in the past and I always test the B64 beside and save a lot of money. Or either way, if they need drenching, I can drench them. They don't need drenching, I don't. It was a great course, I guess.
We can certainly look at getting another one on in the area. There isn't one planned at the moment. There is, however, one that's what they call a FAMACHA training course, which is mainly based around sheep, goats and alpacas. And that's actually comes out of South Africa. And it's looking at the colour of the nictitating membrane and holding it against a card, and it basically gives us an idea of the level of anemia that they've got, and that gives us an idea. So it's particularly for smaller producers that can be really helpful, but really helpful guide for anyone. That's coming up very shortly, and I think there are still a few places left on that. If you rang the office, they could let you know. But I can certainly take note of that, Martin, and we can look at interest levels, definitely. The last thing I just want to touch base on is what happens after the rain. I'm going to see a lot more dead animals after the rain than I see while we're going through a drought. They're going to be threefold. Weight loss is one. Animals that have been doing all right will suddenly go away from feeders and start trying to go after every little bit of green pick they can. There's nothing in it, and they will lose weight. You're far better off to try and confine them, continue to feed them for about 2 weeks until that feed gets away and they can have some body in the feed, and then you can start allowing them in and out and slowly wean them back onto it. You would agree along those sorts of lines?
More issues after the rain than when it rains. And look, if we get a false break and stock go off the feed and then come back on, that's just dynamite stage, because all of a sudden we get a whole heap of grain poison.
Yeah, so just be really aware of that. Make sure you feed for longer than you think before you start putting them out there again. The other one is nitrate toxicity. I've already had a couple on places where water levels have dropped in lagoons, and they've had amaranthus weed in particular was one of them, but it's really high in nitrate. It's full of nutrient because it was in a settled lagoon area, and there were 6 in that particular lot. But as they go on to that change of feed, nitrate levels in that new feed coming through are going to be fairly high, so I will see deaths from those. I will see, as I've already mentioned, deaths from pulpy kidney. The other one that we see quite a lot of around this area is rock fern. It is going to be the first thing that shoots as soon as it rains, and because it's the first green thing in the paddock, they're going to eat it and go searching for it, and it will kill them pretty quickly. So they would be my main alarm ones in this area. Don't put them out too early. If you're feeding them and it rains, don't say, great. Hang on to them. Keep feeding them. Make sure you've dealt with everything else. Wait till there's a body of feed out there, and then you can start letting them out onto it. And nitrate levels, we can do some quick tests for nitrate levels if you're concerned about it, and give you a little bit of an indication, but otherwise we can send feed away and get an idea as well.
Rock fern for weaners.
Yeah.
Weaners is just dynamite, because they're cows, not so, but weaners, they're testing everything out, trying to work out what's good, bad and ugly. And unfortunately they find the ugly.
Yeah.
Is there any supplement you can feed to get around this rock fern, John?
No, there's not, unfortunately. It is what it is. The main thing is trying to increase the type of pasture they've got, so improve the country, so that you minimise the amount of rock fern that's there. But there's nothing you can do to decrease the effect. Yeah. 3-day sickness, it's a quickly little touch base. It may well come. It has started just coming down the north coast. It will turn the corner and come up the Hunter at some stage. Just be aware of animals that if they do start to go down or running high temperatures or shade seeking, it is a possible option. Okay, and if we do, then we look at nursing care with them, but not a huge problem. Just bear in mind the bull infertility that goes along with it. If you get animals that are affected, it is too late to vaccinate. If you're going to vaccinate it, we needed to do that in around December, early January. And that's it. Any questions on any of that?
In the early weaning, when you put them straight onto grain the first 1 or 2 days, what sort of rates are the grain at?
Scone?
About 250 grams.
Right, so not a lot.
No. They start very early. None of the weaners from here have been exposed to grain feeding prior to weaning. So the whole idea of doing it for the 2 days without the hay is to get them onto that feed. Yeah.
Okay. And you can put rumen modifiers. There's companies that got different mixes. The best of the best is virginiamycin, which is Scone, as far as stopping grain poisoning. Another one that's doing the rounds that I don't mind is a product, it's acid buff, which is seaweed extract. So it'll act as a buffer, but there's ways and means, but 250 grams with 200 kilo weaners, that's pretty, you can't say fully safe and bulletproof.
No, but it's pretty safe, yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much.